Well, week 13 or 14 actually has been concluded. All the action and all the games have just been finished, and this of course is the first time in 2 weeks that I'm doing a review, because remember back in week 13 I didn't do a review because I was in LA for that week. But yeah, let's actually talk about these 11 games, and we start out with this one. With Colorado losing again to Vancouver. Goals in this game: Teixeira scoring in the 17th minute, Jordi Reyna in the 39th, and Edgar Castillo scoring his first goal for Colorado in the 41st minute. And that goal by Edgar Castillo is definitely going to be one of the goals that potentially could be nominated as the goal of the week candidate. Although, to be honest, we probably would know that who exactly is going to get goal of the week this week. And I'll talk about more on that when we get to this game. But yeah, Vancouver obviously getting a win, and I'm pretty sure that they'll definitely be happy with this win, although I don't think they're going to just go too overboard, because Colorado is a bad team, and Colorado has now lost 7 straight, and they continue to lose every single week. I mean, it's just getting to this point that those Colorado fans might as well just start chanting, "We lose every week, we lose every week. You're nothing special, we lose every week," because that's what Colorado is right now. They lose every single week, and they just are one of the worst, if not the worst team right now in the league. So there's really not much I can add about this game, and really this is a game that I'm pretty sure everybody did not watch at all. Unless you're a Colorado or Vancouver fan, nobody watched this match, because it was just between two very bad teams that is just hoping to get all 3 points and hoping to trying to maybe get some points on the table and pretend the fact that they are back in contention of going to be making the playoffs. Although maybe Vancouver might be that team that can sneak into the playoffs, because I don't think they're that far away from the red line, even though they are so bad right now. But yeah, next up, so the Galaxy with a surprising 1-1 draw against Portland. Portland 6-game winning streak comes to an end, and rightly so that it came to an end in this game. And I even can say that they kind of got a little bit lucky, the fact that they were able to get a point out of this game, because the Galaxy look really solid. They look like a Galaxy team that beat Portland back in the first week of this season. Chris Pontius, of course, scoring the first goal for the Galaxy. Valeri did get the equalizer off of a penalty, although that penalty is a bit controversial, because it looked like it was a shoulder-to-shoulder tackle between that Galaxy defender, and also I believe it was Valeri that was the one that got fouled. But either way, Portland converts the penalty, and despite the fact that this performance was definitely not good, and certainly probably I would say one of the worst performance that Portland has been displayed doing this last couple of games and doing this winning streak, they still somehow get a point out of this game. And for the Galaxy, they'll be happy with this point, but in some way you could have said that they probably could have got more, because they were definitely the better team in this game. They were dominating the first half, and yet they only put 1 goal in. And when you don't put that second goal in, and you keep a team that like Portland in this game, they will eventually find a way to punish you. And when you have guys like Diego Valeri that, in this case he scored a penalty, but he will always find a way to just somehow punish you for a mistake, or just score a wonder goal, because that's what Diego Valeri is. But yeah, next up, Atlanta winning 3-1 against Philly, although this game was pretty overshadowed by what happened in the 19th minute, and this was probably one of the incidents that will be talked about throughout this week, and how these 2 red cards that has happened. So, for those of you that haven't already know what happened, basically, Atlanta got a penalty. I believe it was Bedoya that basically brought down, I think, Martinez in the box. And I think he got a second yellow in that incident, and then he got sent off. And then Medellin or something like that. It's really hard to pronounce his name. I'm just gonna call him Med for now. But he basically decided to go full Will Johnson and decided to just completely bombard the referee and just barking at the referee nonstop. And even though the ref showed him a yellow card for dissent, he continued to bark at the referee, and eventually the ref just had enough. He gave him a second yellow and he sent him off. And obviously there was a lot of people that were not happy that the ref just sent two Union player off and that he has to give that second yellow card for Met because of that arguing. Some people think that was a little bit harsh, although for me, I actually have no problem with that because it was pretty clear that he basically just went full Will Johnson, and that he basically just completely, like, when he got that yellow card, he needs to understand the fact that, look, you already got a yellow card on dissent. You need to completely control your composure before you potentially are going to get a second yellow card. And although so far, when we see this incident where players get a second yellow card because they started to argue with the referee and kind of like lose their mind, just like what happened a couple of weeks ago with Will Johnson, you know, you got to control your heads. And when you don't control your head, like what man is this in this incident, you are rightfully getting sent off. And I think the decision the ref made in this game is correct. He clearly deserved a second yellow. And I understand why some people say that he shouldn't because it's early in the game, but at the end of the game, or at the end of the day, when you see guys that just argue with the ref and just does not want to stop, what does the ref has to do? Like, the ref tried to tell him to walk away and stop arguing anymore, and that he continues to do that. What can he do? There's absolutely nothing he could have done. So, at the end of the day, I agree with the call, and that, you know, it is a second sending off from Philly, and really, that pretty much just changed the entire game because Philly basically just dominate, or not Philly dominate, but Atlanta pretty much just dominate the rest of the game. Philly actually dominate this game for the first 15 or 16 minutes, but then the red card basically changed the whole sequence. And when you go down to 9 men, and even go down 10 men against Atlanta, and you're an away team, yeah, there is no coming back. And you might as well just turn the TV off at that point because there is just no way you can salvage something out of that. And, you know, rightfully so, Philly lost this game. Martinez with a hat-trick in this game also. I think he also ties with the record with the most hat-trick in MLS. And considering the fact that he only been playing in the MLS for 2 seasons, that is incredible how he's already tied with the hat-trick record. And I have a feeling that he's going to break that record pretty soon. And yeah, I mean, really, the bottom line of this game was just this incident. And there obviously is going to be continuous debate about this incident. And maybe in future game, when a player does get sent off for arguing the ref after he got a yellow card earlier in the sequence, maybe we might have a reference to what happened here. And again, it doesn't happen often, but when it happened, like what it is now, what happened in this game, then yeah, it is what it is. I think the ref made the correct decision. But yeah, next up, this was probably one of the best games so far this season. And there's been a lot of good games this season, but this was certainly one of the best games this season because Columbus, who were just dead and buried in this game, made a miraculous comeback to tie against TFC 3-3. And remember how I said in the preview that the only guy that Columbus are missing in this game is Valenzuela to international duty? Yeah, that is actually not correct. They're actually missing a couple of guys in their squad too. And really, Columbus in some way was fielding kind of a B plus kind of squad against Toronto. They weren't really at full strength. And TFC had a golden opportunity to get all 3 points against Columbus, and they looked like they were gonna get all 3 points in this game when they went 3-0 up with 25 minutes to go. But they completely bottled the 3-0 lead. And if there is one guy, and the one guy only, that was the reason why TFC blew this 3-0 lead, it has to be Michael Bradley. I mean, Bradley was the reason why all 3 of those goals that Toronto conceded happened. I mean, these 3 goals, from the first goal by Jerzy Zardes, basically, Bradley just got out-jumped by Zardes from a corner. And then the second goal, he basically just got pickpocketed by Craig Hall, and Craig Hall basically just puts it into the back of the net. And then the third goal, he basically made probably one of the most clumsiest challenge you'll ever seen in the 18-yard box and give away a penalty. And it's no wonder why a lot of Toronto fans are absolutely pissed off at Bradley right now. And I'm guessing now, TFC fans, you know now how a U.S. men's national team fan feels with Michael Bradley, because there are just some times where he does that. And usually when he is with the U.S. men's national team, he does that more often than it is. I mean, Bradley is not a bad player for TFC, but the reason why he was just so awful, and pretty much awful throughout this season, is because Greg Vanney just basically put him as a center back, thinking that, we might as well just put him there because he started to get older and stuff like that. But it turns out that is clearly not working, and how Bradley looked even worse when he plays in that center back position than when he is at that central defense mid. And in this game, it just pretty much proven, and he basically single-handedly threw away this win for TFC. And I'll tell you what, when I see these kind of miraculous kind of comeback and see teams that blew big leads like this game, it's usually kind of a team kind of effort where one guy kind of made a silly mistake and then another guy. It's just kind of like a domino effect. This game was just a domino effect, but just a single player. Like, once Michael Bradley made that first mistake, he just made another mistake, and then he ultimately made the big mistake by giving away a cheap penalty to Columbus right near the end of the game. And yeah, I mean, this has to be heartbreaking for TFC, because just as they thought that they got all 3 points and get their first row win and continue to climb up the table to get back above the red line, they blew it. They absolutely blew it. And for Columbus, like I said, the fact that they didn't have full strength, they're definitely going to take this result, and certainly will be very happy with this result. I mean, they were dead and buried in this game, and somehow they just came back from the dead. And the resiliency from this team, pretty sure a lot of crew fan has to be very happy about that. But yeah, next up, Montreal with a rare 1-0 win against Houston. It seemed like right now this season, whenever Montreal wins, it always tends to be 1-0. I think so far this season, I think this is like the 4th win for Montreal. And if you look at all 4 of their wins, 3 of them were 1-0 win. I remember they beat TFC 1-0 early in the season. They beat Seattle 1-0 early in the season also. And in this game, they beat Houston 1-0. And for Houston, just as you thought that the curse of the road seems to be broken after that win against the Fire, they find ways to bring back that curse and just lay an egg against Montreal. And really, in this game, the reason why they lay an egg and didn't play well at all against one of the worst team in the league is because Wilmer Cabrera basically just decided to gamble and put a weak squad. And when I mean gamble, I mean inexplicably gambling to try to put a weak squad and rest some of his star players for this game against Montreal, thinking that, nobody lose to Montreal these days and that he can just get a cheeky win against them. And I honestly don't understand why Cabrera did not put his strongest team in this game. Like, I understand he has a US Open Cup in the next match, but they're not playing an MLS team in the next round. They're not even playing a USL team in the next round. And yet they still feel a very weak squad, thinking that they have an MLS team that they're facing in the US Open Cup. And then after the US Open Cup, they're playing Colorado, of all teams, in their next game. And I think that's a home game too. So why in the world did he decide to rest guys doing this time when their next two game is probably the easiest game out of all of their games this season? I mean, I'm lost for words and really just scratching my head of what was Wilmer Cabrera thinking of putting a weak squad that does not include Kyoto and Manotas in this team, and just completely leave Albert Valise, hoping that he can just do it on his own. And really, speaking of Albert Valise, it seemed like he basically decided to go back to the Albert Valise that we kind of know at times, where he just couldn't finish. Like, he had 3 or 4 chances to put the ball into the back of the net, and he just missed it all those times. So, yeah, I mean, Houston, this is certainly a really, really bad loss, and certainly, if there is going to be a game, I think this game is going to potentially haunt Houston back near the end of the season, because if there is going to be right at the end of the season, if there's one game that probably is a game that they should have won, and a game that if they would have won, they would have probably made the playoffs in the end of the season, this will be one of them. Because this was one that Houston should have easily won, because Montreal is just so bad right now. Like, this Montreal's team a couple of days ago was a team that their manager basically just completely threw the team under the bus. So, yeah, I mean, this was a really bad loss for Houston. And for Montreal, I mean, you got to win. And I'm pretty sure they're probably going to be celebrating that. But that's all that they're going to be celebrating, because this team is still trash. And that I don't think this team is going to do anything impressive and start a winning streak in these next couple of games, because there is just so many problems. Like, this team is literally just Piatti and then maybe Jason Vargas, who of course scored in this game also, and that's it. There is nobody else on this team that is just MLS level on this team. Like, most of the players on this team are just either USL level or even just PDL kind of level kind of players. But yeah, moving on to the next game, the Revs with a 2-1 win against the Red Bulls. Goals from the Revs, Diego Fagundes, just before halftime, and I think this was a really crucial goal because, they were down 1-0 because of an early BWP goal, and that they had to have time with a draw and with an equalizer and certainly have the momentum. And certainly that momentum proved in the second half, because Theo Bunbury strikes again. And Bunbury is certainly becoming one of the most quietest and one of the most underrated attacker in the league right now. I mean, this guy has scored 8 goals right now. He's among one of the best goal scorers in the MLS and in the top 5 race in the Golden Boot race. But, for the Revs, this was certainly a much needed win against the Red Bulls. I mean, I knew coming into this game that the Revs has a good opportunity to get a win over the Red Bulls, because the Red Bulls are pretty deflated in terms of their squad. Like, they are missing a lot of players to either World Cup or guys that is just going to be with their country for this little friendly match against a team that is going to be going to the World Cup. And yeah, this was a big opportunity for the refs to take advantage against a weak Red Bulls team, and they took advantage of it. And because of that, the refs definitely, this is another step of them potentially squeeze into that final spot in the playoffs race. I mean, right now, if you look at the playoffs race right now, it seemed like the 4 teams that is currently in the Eastern Conference, the top 4 team most likely is going to be making the playoffs, which means that there's going to be now 2 spots remaining for a team like New England that supposed to be not belong in this conversation of going to the playoffs, could maybe just sneak one in. But we'll see how that's going to go. They need to, of course, continue to get some result like that. And yeah, we're going to see how the Revs will do, and whether or not at the end of the season they can somehow, in some way, make it to the playoffs. And if they do, it would be they would be certainly one of the biggest surprise this season. Like, nobody would have think that the Revs would be making the playoffs this season. Consider how much of a chaos it was that the team that they were putting in for the start of the season. But yeah, next up, NYCFC with a 3-0 win against Orlando City. Now, before I talk about this game, I just want to quickly say that I didn't actually watch most of these 4:30 games that happened this week. This was actually one of the rare ones that I actually catch. I catch about 20 minutes of the first half of this game, and I gotta say, Orlando City, they were absolutely dominating this game in the first half. I mean, they basically were. It almost feels like when this game happens in the first half, it feels like Orlando City was the NYCFC, and that NYCFC was the Orlando City in this game. They basically just kind of like flip-flop in terms of each other identity, because you would think that NYCFC would be the one that dominate the possession and kind of control the game, because that's what NYCFC is, and that's the way that they love to play. But Orlando City absolutely dominate the possession. They absolutely dominate the chances that they have created. And really, the goal that they score by NYCFC in the first half, which the goal scorer was Tajari Shradi, who continues to have an amazing season, was completely against the run of plays. Like, Orlando City was dominating throughout that point, and Tajari Shradi just said, well, you have all the possession, and you had a couple of missed chances, and that, you know, when you don't do that, I'm just going to put one into the back of the net and just say that this is just going to be completely against the run of plays. And that is exactly what happened. And really, for Orlando City, this is just a classic case of a team having more of the possession and having more of the chances, but they just could not finish in this game, could not put away those chances that they have, and at times you just don't know what to do with the possession. So if you add that to the recipe list, that means that this team is not going to win. And it's no surprise that Orlando City has lost this game, and that right now the heat is back on Jason Christ's job security. I mean, Orlando City right now, they have lost, 5 in a row now? And remember how I said in this game, and how I said that there's 2 spots that is available for grabs to potentially, for teams that are not supposed to belong in the playoff race in the Eastern Conference to sneak in, and how a couple of weeks ago I said that there was only 1 spot. Well, the reason why that there's an extra spot now up for grabs in terms of the Eastern Conference playoff race is because Orlando City is just slipping down and just completely falling off a cliff after they went in a 6-game winning streak. And this really kind of felt like the same Orlando City team of last season. Because remember how last season Orlando City went on a good run and how everybody thought that they were going to make the playoffs, and then they went on this really just horrendous run, and eventually they just missed the playoffs completely. It feels like deja vu all over again. It feels like that 6-game winning streak that they had was just completely false hope. And if you're an Orlando City fan, that has to be very frustrating. Seeing your team do well and just completely give you false hope, and then just end up losing like 4 or 5 in a row like that. It's definitely disappointing. And I know doing this stretch, they do have a lot of injuries that they have to deal with. You know, they're missing a couple of key guys like Yoshi Ratun and at times Dom Dwyer missing for this team doing this losing streak. But still, at the end of the day, you know, if a guy went down, if one of your best player went down, you need to find a replacement. And this probably also explain why Orlando City does not have a very good depth chart in this. But for NYCFC, it's certainly a good win for them, and they're going to try to continue to keep pace of potentially getting the Supporters' Shield this season. Speaking of the Supporters' Shield, FC Dallas, they are quietly into the Supporters' Shield conversation. And I think after this game against LAFC, you got to start saying that they could be that team that may be making to that, maybe at the end of the year, might be getting that Supporters' Shield, because this team is quietly risen all the way up into second place in the Western Conference. And they were actually first yesterday in the Western Conference, but Sporting KC, of course, won today, so Sporting KC basically leapfrogged them back in. And remember how in the preview I said that I won't be surprised if FC Dallas will find themselves in the top of the Western Conference? Well, I actually didn't realize that FC Dallas was that close to the top of the table, and that they actually had the top spot for one day. But, you know, this FC Dallas team, and, you know, by the way, if you haven't realized, they won 2-1 against LAFC. Goals from Ziegler and Lamar. Only goal for LAFC is Demundi. But, you know, for this FC Dallas team, the way that this team has just gone through their business, for what I thought it was a very tough stretch, and for what I thought this was a stretch where it was going to doom them. Like, all those points that they have dropped in the first part of the season at home, when they head into this tough stretch, I had a feeling that they are going to drop down near the table. But instead, they have completely done the opposite. And this team right now, the way that they've been playing, look very, I wouldn't say like very similar to that 2015 team, but it's right up there. Like, right now, you got to give a lot of credit to Oscar Pereira and how he has just completely turned this team around, and how after a bit of a kind of a slow start to the beginning of the season, he has completely changed the way where people think that this team was not going anywhere, and that collapse that they had last year was going to be a long-term effect. And I was also one of those guys, seeing what happened in their first couple of games when they were dropping points at home and just losing, or not losing, but not winning against team that they should beat. And now when they get this very easy stretch that they have after going through this tough stretch, you would think that this team would definitely be there in the Supporters' Shield race, and that this team, you know, right now, this team, with the way that they've been playing and with the way that their defense is just absolute rock solid, and that was after the fact that they lost one of their key defender to injury, and that guys on their attack, guys like Roland Lamar, Maxi Arruti, and Mauro Diaz is back to their best form that they were in back in 2015. Watch out. This Dallas team is going to make a lot of noise. And, you know, as for LAFC, well, this is just the beginning for what it would be a really, really long and painful 6 weeks for you guys. I mean, you know, in this game, they basically put a bunch of guys that you probably have never heard of before, and I think their goal scorer Demondi was one of those guys that you probably have never heard of. And the reason why they are forced to put those guys in is because all their star players are going to the World Cup. And, you know, we knew that this was going to be a huge problem for LAFC. And I think for LAFC, one thing that they're definitely going to be a little bit satisfied, even though they know that they're going to get into this really bad stretch in these next couple of weeks, is that at least they have picked up a lot of points early on, that even if they have this really tough stretch doing this time, they can potentially, at the worst case scenario, probably drop below the red line by maybe like 1 or 2 points. Like, after this World Cup is over, if they can still stay above the red line, then I have no doubt that this team is making the playoffs. Like, I have no doubt. Like, reinforcement is definitely coming for this team. I know that they already signed a couple of signings, a couple of DP to get some reinforcement on this team. And as long as if this team stay above the red line, there shouldn't be anything to worry about. And, you know, I have seen a couple of LAFC fans that are kind of panicked about this situation, but all I'll say is that, look, we knew this was going to happen. We knew that you were going to struggle when a lot of your key guys is going to be missing to the World Cup. So just hang on there. Just ride this storm out. And once the storm is over, once this World Cup storm is over, I think you just look at how much damage it has done and just move on from there. So, next up, well, the Quakes lose again. And this time, they lose to Chicago 2-1. Goals in this game, Alan Gordon. Of course, it has to be one of our former players to score against us. And one of my favorite player from the Quakes, Alan Gordon. I mean, you know, the reason why he's one of my favorite is that he always tends to score those late goals. And he always had this kind of late Gordon magic kind of thing whenever he was with the Quakes. And, you know, it's sad that ever since he left, he has been joining our rival, the Galaxy, and then Colorado, and now he's with Chicago. And in Chicago, he started, in these last couple of games, he is literally pretty much just rediscover his Gordo magic that he had when he was with us a couple of seasons ago. And then, of course, Katai score a goal against us, which, by the way, for those of you that always watch my match preview, my Quakes match preview, that is, have you realized that it seemed like every time when I say the players that we got to watch out for always tends to score against us? I mean, I said that Alexander Katai is going to be the guy that we got to watch out for, because since Nemanja Nikolic is not going to be playing in this game, and he didn't play in this game because of injury, this was the guy that they're going to be targeted. And what do you know? That is exactly the guy that the Fire been targeted in this game, and they score against us. Hussein, of course, got one back for us, but like it has been throughout this whole season, it was too little too late. And, you know, I don't have any words to say other than the fact that this is it. This team has completely sucked the energy out of me. Like, I'm just getting beyond to the point where there's just no point to get angry at this team anymore, because this has been happening all season long. Like, I think last week was pretty much the last gas of energy that I have in terms of getting angry at this team left in my tank. After this one, I just, like, after this one, after what I saw by the result of this game, I just couldn't care less, because I knew for a fact that, one, we were going to lose because this team suck, and that this team has a lot of problems, and that this team confident is literally rock bottom. But it's just the fact that, you know, I don't care anymore, because it's just the way it is. They just always tends to disappoint you, and they always tends to just find ways to lose games. And even against an easy opponent like the Fire, and an opponent that we definitely could beat, just couldn't do that. And really, like, I look at the rest of the Quake season, and I'm started, obviously, first of all, I am starting to question the fact that should I even renew my season ticket next year. You know, I heard a lot of Quakes fans are not renewing their season ticket, and I don't blame them, because why do we need to give our hard-earned money to this ownership that we have that is basically just, it's been a repeat cycle of failure about this team for the last 10 years, ever since they become an expansion team and got back to the MLS. And yeah, I mean, this team, the bottom line is this team just sucked the energy out of me. It just gets to a point where I just don't care anymore, because the players just don't care. Like, if the players don't care, if the players are not playing for this team and not playing for the shirt like most of these guys are, why should I care about them? It's simple as that. So, with that being said, let's move on to the next match. And I think maybe the one silver lining I could say about being a Quakes fan, and how there's one good thing that I will say, is that at least I'm not a Sounders fan right now. I mean, right now, if you're a Seattle Sounders fan, oh my goodness, I feel your pain. Like, this team right now, this Sounders team, which once again put up a big goose egg against RSL for the second time in 6 days, and for the 5th time in the last 6 games, are just completely lost. Like, there is clearly players on that team that is just, they don't really care anymore, and that it feels like this core that Seattle has had for the last couple of years is started to run out of steam. I mean, this core is just aging so badly that they desperately need some new direction. And the problem with needing new direction is that it seemed like the ownership of this team is holding them back in terms of the new direction. I mean, right now I hear a lot of Sounders fans are complaining about their ownership, about how they didn't make any changes in the offseason, even though they know that this core is running out of gas, and that the window of potentially continue to be a successful team, like what the Sounders has been every single year since their expansion, is running out. Like, that door is closing in, and the fact that they're not making that transition and not trying to maybe rebuild the squad and trying to get younger, this is exactly the result that you are seeing right now. Like, this is the reason why Seattle, and which is why I think this year that there is just, unless they just, this ownership group decided to make a change and just finally bring in some fresh kind of youth guys and trying to bring in an actual goal scorer on this team, this Seattle team is not going to make the playoffs. And they're not going to be making the playoffs for the first time in like a long time. Actually, it might be the first time ever in their franchise, in their MLS franchise history, that they are not going to be making the playoffs. Because I think every single season they have made the playoffs. But, you know, talking about this game, well, for the Sounders, it was obviously utterly embarrassment. They had no shot on goal in this game. And I know that there was some refereeing decision that goes against them. But at the end of the day, if you did not pose any shot on target and your offense didn't even try to attack, it doesn't matter it doesn't matter if there's a bad refereeing decision, if the ref missed a handball or something like that, or just call a foul on you. If you don't even give your effort in this game, refereeing decision seems pretty meaningless. And, you know, in this game, obviously Corey Bear finally broke the deadlock in this game. And then Luis Silva, remember how I talked about how in the goal of the week candidate and how we probably have an obvious one? Well, this one it is. I mean, Luis Silva just basically chipped the goalkeeper from like 40 yards out. Well, To be fair, it wasn't really a chip because Stephen Fry was out of his area to take a corner to potentially maybe salvage a goal for, or salvage a draw for the Sounder. Something that you usually see a lot of time in hockey when they have like an empty netter, and that was the case. And basically Luis Silva basically just hit it into the empty net, and yeah, that was a 2-0 win for RSL, and another game where they shut out Seattle. And RSL have started to build up some momentum, and as mediocre as RSL is, and as pretty much a lot of RSL fan will tell you, that right now they're kind of like in the same situation with Seattle, where they desperately need a striker, because it's pretty clear that Corey Bear and Luis Silva is not the answer for them. I mean, they've been at times score 1 or 2 goal at that, but they're not a goal scorer that you really like. At time when you really need a goal, these two guys are not going to be the guys that you are really hoping that they can give you that goal. So, RSL, certainly they'll be looking for a striker in the summer transfer window, but they're currently in 3rd place in the West, and certainly they're as bad as it has been so far this season, where there's been times where this team looked just very inconsistent and very mediocre. They find themselves 3rd in the Western Conference. And it's just me once again talking about how the Western Conference this season has been just so wacky. Like, you have teams that is like RSL, that if you throw them in the Eastern Conference, they will guarantee to be near the bottom of the Eastern Conference. But not in the West, because the West is literally wide open, and really there's no team in the West that is actually, you could say that they're absolutely amazing. Which is gonna be very interesting when the Western Conference playoffs begin. Like, I guarantee that there probably is gonna be one team that you definitely did not expect to make it to the MLS Cup final, but they made it. And that's probably the beauty about the Western Conference. But yeah, into the final game of this week, and currently probably the only team you could say that is actually good, although their last couple of resort hasn't really proven that. Sporting KC with a win against Minnesota. They get a straightforward 4-1 win against Minnesota. Shalawi, Kuzan, Leboda, and also Rubio with the goal. Tyron Mears with a goal in this game, and this one probably might be one that could rival the Luis Silva goal, because that goal that Tyron Mears hit from like 30 yards out, that was just absolutely insane. I mean, what a crazy goal that was. And certainly that was literally after Shalawi made a very good goal on the other end too. And at that point, I thought potentially Minnesota was gonna come back in this game, and potentially maybe they can do what they did literally 2 weeks ago when they also play Sporting KC and get a draw. But nope, not this time, because Sporting KC put the 4 to the sword of Minnesota. And also, I forgot to mention that Minnesota also had a player sent off right around the 67th minute. Maximiliano got sent off with a second yellow. No doubt about that he got a second yellow, because he basically got stud up on one of the Sporting KC player. And yeah, that is pretty much it for all 11 games from this week. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of all 11 of these games? And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I will see you guys next time.